Today is the first of a series of talks I'm going to give about the Heart Sutra. And I'm going to be doing it the way commentators have for many centuries, which is line by line, phrase by phrase, and sometimes one character just taken by itself. And the reason for this is that these phrases are portals. Each one is incredibly condensed. You open it up, I call them jewel phrases. You open up the jewel and inside you see this world of thought. And it's because the Heart Sutra itself is so incredibly condensed. So today we'll begin with the title, which is Maka Hannya Haramita Shingyo, the great Hannya Haramita Heart Sutra. So we'll get to what Hannya Haramita means later on. We're going to start with Maka, that means great. And it's actually not Chinese. This is a word from Sanskrit, which is Maha. And Maha is one of those Indo-European words that we have in English: magnificent, magnitude, magnum cum laude, magna, anything like that is from Maha. Maharaja in India. And it was not translated from Sanskrit as it easily could have been, because it just means big. And the Chinese have, of course, Da, which means big, but they have lots of other words: great, grand, huge, splendid, tremendous. And so in many words, they didn't use them. They went with this, Maka. And it's because it sounds more mysterious. It's got a little bit more something cloudy and sort of drawing you into it than just a simple word like da, big. And we do this in English all the time. Ennui in French sounds much more just driven to distraction with boredom than the simple word boredom, or zeitgeist, that you could easily translate as the spirit of the world, but that doesn't have that kind of cosmic weight, of the German, or chutzpah, of course, Yiddish, which has so many wonderful words for human foibles. And so, of course, chutzpah, which is the nerve to do something. But, nerve, well, okay, but chutzpah, that sounds like they really had the nerve. So this is a case of one of these words that's not really translatable, and it actually belongs to a category. The Chinese had, early translators had a set of 5 categories of words not to be put into Chinese. And one of them was mantra, which are the magical syllables. And another was philosophical words that just didn't have any good counterpart in Chinese. And so it's curious that they found a word like big to have some kind of philosophical meaning that meant it couldn't go into Chinese. There's another aspect about this, which is it tells you in the first 2 syllables that this is not from China. The Japanese and the Chinese and the Tibetans recite this. Millions of people recite it every day, but it didn't come from Japan or China or Tibet. It came from India. And so this is taking you right in the first syllables to someplace far away, a magical, distant place, land of the Hindu gods, that none of us will ever see or visit. Maka is a relic from the Holy Land. There's another aspect of this, which is that it was added later. It was not in the original translation that Xuanzang did. There's no Maka. So there's a lot of discussion about when it was added and why it was added. Some commentators think it was to make it more mysterious. But there's possibly another reason, which is it's more rhythmical. Maka Hannya Haramita Shingyo comes across much better than just Hannya Haramita Shingyo. And that reminds us of the fact that the Heart Sutra, of course, is a book of wisdom, but it's also a kind of a poem, or even the lyrics of a song. And most people, and this is kind of a key element of this sutra, most people don't read it. It's not something you'd sit down and read. You chant it. So people chant the sutra, which is almost like singing a song. And so these rhythmical, poetic elements are also in there. And we'll see other cases as we go along where it's pretty clear that a choice of words was done for rhythmical purpose. But finally, we get to the most important element, really the philosophical element, which may have been in the minds of those translators, which is to do with the paradox of the meaning. Great. One thing about the Heart Sutra is it's full of paradoxes. It says there is A, and then it says there is not A. It denies, it refutes, it flip-flops back and forth. Nothing is ever quite what it seems. And these paradoxes are what have fascinated people, and why people over the years like me end up writing books about it, because they're the ultimate puzzle. So it begins by saying the great Hannya Haramita Heart Sutra, but Hakuin, who was one of the important Zen abbots of the 18th century and a very eccentric and amusing writer, wrote a book called Poison Words on the Heart Sutra. And in it he says, everybody talks about how this word Maka means great, grand, but no, they're all wrong. Bring me a small wisdom. So what Hakuin is talking about there is that this thing, the Heart Sutra, is tiny. I mean, the whole thing is 270 characters, 50-some lines. You can recite the whole thing in a minute. As important philosophical writings in the world go, this might be the shortest that exists. And so it is a small wisdom. It's something really brief. And that's an irony, because it just told you that it was great. But actually, it's the opposite of that. But of course, this takes us to this element of it being a portal. And I begin my book, Finding the Heart Sutra, the very opening line begins with the story from the so-called Flower Garland Sutra, which is about a seeker after wisdom who climbs to the top of the tower of Maitreya, who is the Bodhisattva of the future, Buddha of the future. And he finds there just a low door, but he opens this door, and inside is an infinity of golden pagodas and castles and towers, more towers. And they're all inset with jewels and draped with flowers, and there's gold dust following over it all. And inside of each of those towers are another infinity of towers. And all of that is contained within that little door, that little room that's behind that little door. And so this sutra is very much like that. It's a world of thought contained in just a few lines. It's the cosmos contained in a grain of sand.